even stronger for tax reform that brings more fairness to the tax code, restores revenue lost to unjustified tax loopholes, reduces the deficit, and protects important priorities. And I look forward to working with our colleagues and with the administration to turn that momentum into real reform. Madam President, I thank the Chair and I yield the floor. I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Madam President,
Senator from New York.
I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise today to discuss the amendment to the Surface Transportation Bill offered by my friend and colleague from Missouri, Senator Blunt. For reasons beyond me, the other side has demanded a vote on birth control. It seems they wish to debate whether we should take away access to contraception for millions of women. Mr. President, Madam President, cooler heads are not prevailing on the other side of the aisle these days. There are some wiser voices on their side who do seem to regret they are having this debate, but they are the minority. Just this morning, the senior senator from Alaska is quoted in the New York Times expressing exasperation of her party's push to roll back access to contraception. She says, quote, "I don't know where we are going with this issue," end quote. I sympathize with the frustration shown by my friend from Alaska. There's no good answer about where the other side is going with this issue, except perhaps back to the 19th century. The whole debate is an anachronism. Our country progressed beyond the issue of whether or not to allow birth control a long time ago. Yet here we are in 2012, and some in the Republican Party suddenly want to turn back the clock and take away contraception from millions of women. Make no mistake, that's what this debate is about, as backward as it is. I keep hearing this measure being referred to as the Blunt Amendment, named after its sponsor, my friend, the senator from Missouri. We should instead call it for what it will be, an attempt to take away for millions of women birth control. We should call it for what it will be, an attempt. Mr. President, if this amendment passes, it would ban contraception coverage for any woman in America whose boss has a personal objection to it. The measure would force women to surrender control of their own health decision to their bosses. That concept is not merely quaint or old-fashioned. It is dangerous and it is wrong. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, some 20 million American women could be cut off from health services by this proposal. The other side doesn't want the debate framed in those terms because they know it makes them look silly. So instead, they're spinning. In the last week, there have been op-eds penned by the minority leader, the junior senator from Massachusetts, the junior senator from Missouri, all seeking to frame this about protecting religious liberty. The debate may have been about religious liberty for a time, but now some on the other side have overplayed their hand. They may have started out seeking protections for religious-affiliated employers, but now they just sense a ripe time to make headway on a far-right social agenda. The debate reminds me of a famous quote that our former colleague Dale Bumpers used to invoke. It was a quote by H.L. Mencken, who said, "When someone says it's not about the money, it's usually about the money." Well, when the other side tries so hard to claim this isn't a debate about contraception, that's how you know this debate is precisely about contraception. The amendment's not about religious liberty. The truth is, religious institutions have always been exempt under the law from certain coverage requirements. Under the President's compromise, an even larger set of employers, those with a religious affiliation, like certain hospitals and schools, also will not have to pay for contraception coverage. It will instead be covered by the insurance company. The President's compromise has been widely embraced, including by many of the same church-affiliated organizations that expressed concern originally. The administration is working on a solution for self-insured employers. I'm confident they'll find a way that works for everyone. The amendment being voted on tomorrow is not responsive to any real concerns about religious freedom. Its reach extends far beyond church organizations that legitimately seek considerations based on conscience. It wants to let any employer in the country decide to cut off services for any reason whatsoever. Under the guise of religious liberty, some on the hard right are trying to accomplish a political goal, banning contraception more widely. This is a goal the other side has been pursuing for a while now at the state level. At the heart of many of the personhood proposals being advanced in state legislatures is an attempt to cut off women's access to certain forms of contraception. Some Republicans in the Senate now seem to want to nationalize this fringe debate over whether contraception should be allowed. It's not a political winner. Even the House Republicans seem to have the good sense not to bring up the amendment on the floor of their chamber. But here, the other side is pushing ahead with the ban. It is so far-reaching, it has stirred a wide collection of health organizations to speak out against it. These are groups like the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, the March of Dimes, Easter Seals. These are groups with no agenda other than protecting the health of those they serve. In a letter these groups sent earlier this week, they pointed out the wide variety of services that an employer could decline to provide, like child vaccinations and mammograms. It is true that all these services and more are threatened by this amendment. But are Republicans against child vaccinations and mammograms? I doubt it. So let's admit what this debate is really about and what Republicans really want to take away from millions of American women. It is contraception. We should call this debate and this amendment for what it will be. For millions of women whose boss may have a personal objection, this is a contraception ban. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Maryland.
Madam President, I arise today to commemorate the 200th anniversary of the War of 1812 and the Star-Spangled Banner, and to honor the memory of all Americans who came together in America's Second War of Independence, particularly those fallen heroes who gave their lives during the conflict. It is important that Americans recognize the service and sacrifice of all those who have worn the uniform of this nation. On behalf of the United States Senate, I want to thank the millions of brave men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces and risked their lives for our nation, including during the War of 1812. The War of 1812 confirmed America's independence from Great Britain in the eyes of the world. Before the war, the British had been routinely imposing on American sovereignty. They had impressed American merchant seamen into the British Royal Navy, enforced illegal and unfair trade rules with the United States, and allegedly offered assistance to American Indian tribes who were attacking frontier settlements. In response, the United States declared war on Great Britain to protest these violations of free trade, sailors' rights, and sanctioning raids on American land. After 2.5 years of conflict, the British Navy sailed up the heart of the Chesapeake Bay with a combined military and naval forces, and in August 1814 attacked Washington, D.C., burning to the ground the U.S. Capitol, the White House, and much of the rest of our capital city. Less than 3 weeks later, the British set their eyes upon the next prize, the strategic port city of Baltimore, Maryland. American forces, primarily made up of citizens of Baltimore, prepared Baltimore City's defenses. Marylanders fought the British Army during the Battle of North Point and helped repulse the British Navy from Fort McHenry during the now infamous Battle of Baltimore. I want to point out that the American forces during the Battle of North Point were volunteer militia, heavily outnumbered by the highly trained British infantry, managed to delay the British forces long enough for 10,000 reinforcements to arrive, preventing a land attack against Baltimore. The British assault also failed at sea. Following 25 hours of intense British naval bombardment at Fort McHenry, the American defenders refused to yield, and the British were forced to depart. During the bombardment, an American lawyer, Francis Scott Key, who was being held on board an American flag of truce vessel in Baltimore Harbor, beheld by the dawn's early light the American flag still flying atop Fort McHenry. Key realized that the Americans had survived the battle and stopped the enemy advance. Moved by the sight of the American flag flying over Fort McHenry, he composed the poem called The Defense of Fort McHenry, which was later set to the music, becoming the Star-Spangled Banner, that officially became the national anthem on March the 3rd, 1931. Mr. President, we will be celebrating this weekend the 82nd anniversary of the Star-Spangled Banner becoming the official national anthem of our country. The flag that flew over Fort McHenry during that fateful night is now a national treasure on display at the Smithsonian Institute, an inspiration to all Americans a very short distance from where we are today. The War of 1812 confirmed the legitimacy of the Revolution and served as a critical test for the United States Constitution and newly established democratic government. Our young nation battled against the largest, most powerful military on the earth at the time and emerged with an enhanced standing among the countries of the world. A new generation of Americans, too young to remember the victory of the Revolutionary War, were inspired by Francis Scott Key's poem to take pride in our nation's flag, which embodies our universal feelings of patriotism and courage. As a Marylander, I am proud of the role that my state has played in the War of 1812, and I've been involved in legislative efforts to bring greater attention to this bicentennial celebration. My colleague, Congressman Ruppersberger, and I were sponsors of the Star-Spangled Banner Commemorative Coin Act, signed into law by President Obama in August 2010, directing the United States Mint to create coins commemorating this important anniversary. These gold and silver coins, designed or emblematic of the War of 1812, particularly the Battle of Baltimore, that form the basis for the lyrics to our national anthem. The coins are set to go on sale in March and will be sold only during this year. The surcharges from these commemorative coins will provide support to the Maryland War of 1812 Bicentennial Commission to conduct bicentennial activities, assist in educational outreach, and preserve sites and structures related to the War of 1812. I'm also planning to introduce with my colleagues, Senator Portman and Senator Kerry and Senator Mikulski, a resolution to mark this occasion to celebrate the heroism of the American people during the conflict and to recognize the various organizations involved in organizing commemorative events in Maryland and throughout the United States in the coming years, including the United States Armed Forces, the National Park Service, and the Maryland War of 1812 Commission. As we recognize all these ongoing efforts during this commemorative period, I encourage all Americans to remember the sacrifice of those who gave their lives to defend our nation's freedom and democracy, and to join in the bicentennial celebration of our victory in the War of 1812. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor and suggest I'll yield the floor.
The senator from California is recognized.
Mr. President, could you tell me what the pending business is? Are we on the transportation bill at this time?
The majority has 4 minutes left in morning business.
All right, then I would note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The Senate's been offering general speeches this morning, and well, in about 2 minutes, they are expected to spend the rest of the day on the surface transportation measure. Progress on the bill has been stymied due to negotiations over unrelated amendments. Much of the conversation has been centered on the germaneness of the contraception amendment offered by Senator Roy Blunt of Missouri. That bill that amendment would allow insurance providers to decline to offer coverage if they're morally opposed to it. Senators have agreed to vote on that amendment tomorrow. House members are offering general speeches right now. A little bit later today, they'll work on a bill eliminating environmental protections for a number of fish species.
Without objection, the senator from New York is recognized.
Thank you. It is with great disappointment and bafflement that I stand here yet again in the year 2012 to draw a line in the sand against another outrageous attempt to roll back women's access to basic health care services. After insisting that we debate the long-settled concept of providing access to birth control, when 99% of American women use this medication at some point in their life, many of whom use it not even for contraception, Republicans have chosen to take another extreme step to roll back all women's health care rights. So instead of talking about how to grow our economy, we are wasting time on the latest overreach and intrusion into women's lives. When will my colleagues understand this very non-debatable fact, that the decision of whether a woman takes one medicine or another, or what type of health care she should have access to, should not be the decision of her boss? A common sense, simple principle that bosses and employers should not make these very personal decisions. What could be more intrusive than that? Let me be clear. This debate, as you said, Senior Senator from New York, and Mr. President, as you said in your remarks, this has nothing to do with religious freedom. You don't have to take it from me. Take it from the Supreme Court. Take it from Justice Antonin Scalia, one of the most conservative justices of our Supreme Court. In the majority decision in 1990, Employment Division versus Smith, Justice Scalia wrote, "We have never held that an individual's religious beliefs excuse him from compliance with an otherwise valid law prohibiting that the state is free to regulate." And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Employers cannot pick or choose which laws they're going to follow. Employers can't pick or choose if they want to follow this labor law or that labor law. They have to follow the law. This extreme amendment Republicans are bringing up for a vote today makes it clear as day. This is a political and ideologic overreach, not a religious issue. The fact that they want to exempt all businesses from providing any preventive care for a woman is outrageous and a clear, callous disregard for the health and well-being of America's women. The Blunt Amendment would allow any insurer or employer to refuse coverage for any health care service otherwise required under the Affordable Care Act, jeopardizing vital and necessary health care services for millions of Americans. Services like prenatal care that help our babies survive, fertility treatments, testing for HIV, mental health services, screening for cervical cancer, screening for type 2 diabetes, vaccinations. Coverage for any or all of these services and countless of others could be denied to any person under this radically broad amendment. This amendment isn't just dangerous for women. It's also dangerous to our children, and children's health groups are opposing this amendment because vaccines could be denied on the basis of personal beliefs. And denying childhood preventive care could negatively influence their health as adults, adding billions of dollars in additional health care costs throughout the lives of these children as they grow. We will not stand for these attempts to undermine the ability of a woman to make her own decisions about what is best for her and what is best to protect her children. If our Republican colleagues want to continue to take on this issue head-on, we will stand here as often as necessary to draw a line in the sand and to make it known that in the Senate we oppose these attacks on women's rights and women's health. And even if House Republicans aren't going to allow women's voices to be heard in their hearings, women's voices will surely be heard all across our country. It's time to agree that women deserve access to preventive health care services regardless of where they work and who their boss is. And it is time to agree to get back to work on legislation that can create jobs and get our economy moving. That is what the American people want us to be debating. That is what our mission should be here in Congress. And that is where our sole focus should be, not on undermining protections and well-being for America's women. I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Could I ask the senator yield on her request?
I withdraw my request.
Thank you. And I wonder if we are now on the transportation bill.
Morning business is closed, and under the previous order, the Senate will resume consideration of S. 1813, which the clerk will report.
Calendar 311, S. 1813, a bill to reauthorize federal aid highway and highway safety construction programs and for other purposes.
Good job.
Mr. President, as you relinquish the chair to your colleague from New York, I want to thank both of you for your amazing leadership in every issue we turn to today. And I want to say to Senator Schumer, his work to help us bring this transportation bill to the floor is exemplary. And he knows, and as Senator Gillibrand knows, and every one of us knows, that we cannot have a strong economy if we can't move goods, if we can't move people, if commerce comes to a halt. So we have to pass a transportation bill to make sure that our highways are adequate, our bridges are safe, our commerce can move, and our transit systems can carry people from one place to another. I want to say to my colleague who is now sitting in the chair, Senator Gillibrand, that I listened to her remarks, and I am very touched by them. She talks about women's voices, and she is dedicated to ensuring that they are heard. And let me assure my friend that her voice has been heard on this and so many other important issues. And it's an effective voice. And she was the one who came to me when the Republicans started to say they didn't think it was necessary for women to have access to birth control with no copay through their insurance, said, Barbara, do you understand that a full 15% of women are prescribed birth control pills because they want to avoid ovarian cancer? They want to make sure that a cyst on an ovary doesn't get out of control. They want to avoid debilitating monthly pain. And even it is used for terrible skin conditions. So when we hear our colleagues talk about birth control as if it's some unnecessary prescription, although you never hear them say it when it comes to Viagra, I would note, let me point out it's necessary. And we will be on our feet day after day and month after month and hour after hour and minute after minute, because we're not going to let them take away medicine from women. Oh, no, they're not. They won't. And the women of this country won't have it. They are engaged in this debate. They understand it. And my friend from New York has been an incredible voice. So here we are now, we're on the highway bill, and you may wonder, why is it that the senator from New York came and talked about the issue of birth control and women's health when we're on a highway bill? Well, here's the news. My Republican colleagues are so intent on taking away women's rights to health care, that they insisted on having a vote to take away those rights before they would allow a highway bill to move forward. Can you imagine? And I think it appropriate that at this point I pay tribute to my colleague, Senator Olympia Snowe, who has been an amazing colleague, who has been a voice of reason, a voice of progress over the many, many years she has served. And I have served with her in the House, in the Senate, I don't know, decades. And I will miss Olympia Snowe. But let's listen to what she said. She said, this place has become so polarized, so partisan, we can't move forward. And I would submit to you, Madam President, that the situation we find ourselves in at this moment is Exhibit A on why someone like Olympia Snowe is saying, you know, this has been a privilege and a wonderful thing, but I think I'm going to move on. Because here we have a highway bill that is completely bipartisan. And again, my colleague in the chair from New York, Senator Gillibrand, is a very important member of the Environment and Public Works Committee. We passed the bill out of our committee with a vote of 18-0. We had 100% support in a polarized time because everybody understands we have to make sure we have a #1 transportation system, a Class A transportation system in this great country of ours. A vision that was first brought to us by Dwight Eisenhower in the 50s when he said we have to be able to have a network of national highways. And so here is a bill that comes out of the EPW Committee, Environment and Public Works Committee, 100% bipartisan. The section that dealt with banking comes out of the Banking Committee, 100% bipartisan. It comes out of the Finance Committee, very bipartisan, not 100%, but very. And in Commerce, it had a problem, which we have rectified, and it is now bipartisan. So 4 committees have done their work on the Transportation Highway Bill, and all of them have been bipartisan. So we come to the floor. I think this is now the 3rd week or the 2nd week on the bill. 2nd week on the bill. And we have gone nowhere. Because in order for us to move forward, the Republicans are insisting on a vote to take away women's health care. And so Senator Reid said to them, fine, we'll vote on it Thursday morning. But let it be known throughout this land what is going on. Sometimes people tune in and they say, oh, it's so complicated, I can't follow it. Hey, it's not complicated. Here's where we are. We have a bipartisan bill. 2.8 million jobs are at stake. We have to do it. The transportation bill is going to expire, the authorization, so we won't have any program in place March 31st. We have to do this work. And we can't move forward unless we have a vote on a polarizing amendment, How did it come about, this polarizing amendment? It came about because we passed a health care law that made some incredible breakthroughs. And 2 of the biggest breakthroughs, I think, in that bill is that we, for the first time, said to insurance companies and employers, when you provide insurance for your people, it must include a list of essential health care benefits and preventive health care benefits. Let me read you the list of essential health care benefits that the people of America are going to have unless the Blunt Amendment passes and takes this away, okay? This is the list of essential benefits that the Blunt Amendment would take away. Emergency services, hospitalization, maternity and newborn care, mental health treatment, preventive and wellness services, pediatric services, prescription drugs, ambulatory patient services, rehabilitation services and devices, and laboratory services. These are categories of services that health insurance plans must cover under health care reform. But if the Blunt Amendment passes, and we know it started because of birth control, but it has reached beyond that to every single essential health benefit that any employer in this nation, if Blunt passes, could say, I don't want to do any of these, I don't want to do some of these because I have a moral objection. So if you work for an employer who believes that prayer is what we need to cure illness, and by the way, that's their right, I would fight for their right to believe that, they would be able, however, to tell you that that's your alternative, and they don't have to provide any of these essential health benefits in their insurance plan. Now, the other thing the Blunt Amendment does is says that no more preventative health benefits will be required. Under the law, these are the preventive health benefits that are required to be offered to you. And, Madam President, you don't have to take them if you're an employee who has an objection to any of these things. You don't have to do it, but they have to be offered to you. All right? Breast cancer screenings, cervical cancer screenings, hepatitis A and B vaccines, measles and mumps vaccine, colorectal cancer screenings, diabetes screenings, cholesterol screenings, blood pressure screenings, obesity screening, tobacco cessation, autism screening, hearing screening for newborns, sickle cell screening, fluoride supplements, tuberculosis testing for children, depression screening, osteoporosis screening, flu vaccines for children and the elderly, contraception. Contraception is a preventive health benefit because we know it prevents unintended pregnancies and it prevents abortions and it prevents illness because 15% of people take it to prevent illness, cancer and such. Well woman visits, HPV testing, STD screening, HIV screening, breastfeeding support, domestic violence screening, gestational diabetes screening. All of these have to be provided. You don't have to take them as an individual. If you don't want to take contraception, you say, no, I'm not interested in that. If you don't want to have your child have a vaccine, personally, I think that's terrible, but you might decide not. You don't have to. But that's what's required. Under the Blunt Amendment, let's be clear, any employer who simply says they have a moral objection can say, sorry, you see this list? We're not going to do 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 things on it. For example, obesity screening, we don't feel that's your problem. You know, I have a moral objection. Colorectal cancer screenings, I have an objection to that because, again, my religion says that it doesn't do any good. So this is why Blunt is so dangerous. It is about denying women the absolute right to have contraception offered to them. Does that, but it does a lot more than that. So again, we're on a highway transportation bill. It's 2.8 million jobs. It came out of 4 committees. It's bipartisan. It will keep this country moving. It will keep this economy going. Madam President, I want you to imagine one Super Bowl stadium filled with people. Think about what that looks like in your mind's eye. One Super Bowl stadium, every seat filled. And now I want you to imagine 15 of those stadiums filled. That's how many unemployed construction workers there are in this great country today. Yes, we're making progress. Yes, President Obama took us out of the worst recession since the Great Depression that he inherited. Yes, he turned it around. But he and we say we've got to do more. We can't just say because we're now creating jobs it's enough. It's not enough. President knows it. We know it. We were bleeding 800,000 jobs a month when he took over. We were bleeding. And now we've stemmed it and we're creating a couple of 100,000 jobs a month, 100,000, 200,000, thank goodness. And we've created, since the last 6 months or so, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs. Now, here's the point. Why on earth would we take a U-turn here as we're on the road to economic recovery, as we're on the road to a bill that is absolutely necessary, and take up the issue of women's health? I'm telling you, I feel it is radical. I feel it is taking us backwards. I feel it is hurtful to women, and I call on every woman, regardless of political party, make your voice heard against the Blunt Amendment. You are being attacked here. What the President did in dealing with the issue of contraception showed the wisdom of Solomon. He basically said, if you are a religious institution and you have an objection to offering contraception, You don't have to do it. So 335,000 churches are exempted from this. I feel sorry for the employees who may not agree with the church, but they work for the church, and therefore that's the rule. That's the rule. Religiously affiliated hospitals and universities raised a question. You know, they serve a broad array of people. They hire a broad array of people, not just people of one faith, but people of many faiths and many points of view. And they raised a question and said, well, we don't feel comfortable. And the president said, let me see what I can come up with. And he came up with a compromise that has been embraced by Catholic Charities, Catholics United, the Catholic Health Association. The only group that doesn't support him are the bishops. But if I could respectfully say to them, they don't deliver the health care services. Catholic Charities does. The Catholic Health Association does. They represent thousands of providers. So they have embraced the president's compromise. But not my Republican friends. They didn't, and they want to cause trouble and take away the ability from women to have access to contraception without a copay while they support supplying Viagra to men. It really is stunning. And I think this is rippling across the land. And, you know, I don't know if we have the photo, I don't think we have it on the floor, of the group, the last panel that was held in the House, where, and my friend from New York talked about it. We actually do. Thank you, Sarah. This is a picture. A picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a panel on women's health, focused on contraception. Where are the women? Where are the women? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men. And they're talking about women's health care. Not one of them ever had a baby. Not one of them ever had a monthly cramp. And they're talking about women's health care like they know all about it. And the Chairman Issa, didn't see immediately there was a problem. There was a woman sitting here, and she asked to be heard. She said, I have a story to tell this panel. Oh, no, he didn't want to hear from her. He said she wasn't qualified. And you know what her story was? It was about how a friend of hers was denied the contraceptive pill and instead developed a terrible tumor on her ovary. And he didn't think that was worthy of discussion. This issue is rippling through the land. And it says everything to me. And we in the Senate, we women of the Senate, we are not going to allow this to go unnoticed. That is a symbol of what's happening to women in this country. In the states, the various states, they're passing legislation that some have dubbed state rape because it would require a woman to subject herself to an invasive vaginal probe without her consent. Now they're backing off. That was the bill that almost passed the Virginia legislature. Now they've said, okay, it's a sonogram, there's another way to do it. And it took women crying out and saying, wait a minute, are you kidding? And they're backing off. Well, they better back off all of this because this is the 21st century. And women should be trusted and respected and honored and believed. When you tell a woman that she needs to be lectured by some stranger on her own personal decisions, right away you are questioning her worth. So the issue goes so far beyond the ability to obtain birth control pills. The issue goes so far beyond that. It really does. And you can stand up here and say it's not about women's health, it's really about religious freedom. As Patty Murray, my colleague from Washington, has said, when they say it's not about contraception, it's about contraception. And others have said, when they say it's not really about the money, it's really about the money. When they say, oh, it's not really about politics, it's about the politics. And this is about contraception, making it really difficult for women who don't have the means to have some sense of control over their reproductive lives and to be able to access a pill that could help them live a healthier life and live longer and free of pain. So they'll come here and they'll say, oh, Senator Boxer, this isn't about contraception, it's about religious freedom. The President has taken care of the religious objections. I described how he did it, and I'll say it again. He said if you're a religious institution, you don't have to provide contraception. If you're a religiously affiliated institution, there'll be a way for a third party to deal with it. The Catholic Health Organization supported Catholic Charities. He has come up with the compromise. There's no reason to have this polarizing debate. Everybody should have religious freedom, including the employee, including the boss, including everybody should have religious freedom. So no one under the President's plan is forced to do something they don't want to do. We just want to make sure that when the Institute of Medicine tells us that availability to contraception saves lives and protects your health, you get a chance to get it if you want it. And if you don't have to get it. Of course not. Of course not. So, again, I'm going to end where I started, talking about my colleague Olympia Snowe. Retiring, not running again, because she said we're so polarized here. And this is Exhibit 1. We're on a transportation bill that's bipartisan, but the other side can't let it rest, can't let it go, can't move forward on it, can't move to make sure that our businesses and our workers have a brighter future. Oh, no, they have to delay it. By the way, not only with this birth control amendment and women's health amendment, but with other amendments that have nothing to do with the subject. And it's what makes the American people wonder, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I want to show you some charts that deal with the transportation issue right now. So I'm going to ask if my staff could join me here. And I want to continue talking about Olympia Snowe for a minute. I went through some of the issues that I worked with her on, and I want to talk about them for a minute. Olympia and I wrote the Passenger Bill of Rights. And we were very strong because we knew that our constituents were getting stuck on aircraft for hour after hour, stuck on the tarmac, no food, kids screaming, nightmare scenarios, excessive periods of time, 9–10 hours on the runway, and we thought passengers deserved a Bill of Rights. We worked with outside groups, some wonderful people, and lo and behold, it passed as part of the FAA bill that finally got enacted. We didn't get 100% of what we wanted, but we got 90% of what we wanted, and I was proud to work with her. In 2009, following a tragic Buffalo commuter plane crash, which I know President of the Senate remembers, Olympia Snowe wrote a bill to implement the recommendations of the National Transportation Safety Board to make sure that these pilots get enough rest and that they're well trained. And we were very pleased that that moved forward. We worked together, Olympia and I, on Purple Heart for POWs to make sure that the Purple Heart included prisoners of war who died in captivity, and they could get that to bless their memory. We worked together against the global gag rule. We worked together and wrote a letter to the President, President Obama, asking him to appoint a woman to replace Justice David Souter. And I'm going to ask if I could place this in the record.
Objection.
Because I'm so proud of this letter we wrote together. We said, the most important thing is to nominate an exceptionally well-qualified, intelligent person to replace Justice Souter. Women make up half our population, but right now hold only 1 seat out of 9. This is out of balance. In order for the court to be relevant, it needs to be diverse and better reflect America. And then, of course, the President nominated Sonia Sotomayor, and we're very excited about that. So it was wonderful to work with her on that. We worked together on respecting human rights in Tibet and led 27 senators in a letter to Chinese leader Hu Jintao, asking that the Tibetans be respected. And women in Afghanistan, we worked together to ask Afghan leaders to revise a law that would legalize marital rape and impose other Taliban restrictions on Shiite women in Afghanistan. So this is just a partial list of what I've worked, issues I've worked with Olympia on, and I will do a longer tribute for the record at a later time. But again, as I heard this, I was filled with sad. First, I was worried about her health, and I thought, I hope she's okay, and then she clarified that she absolutely was. I wish her nothing but the best, and I know she'll always work on issues because she's so good at looking at a problem and solving it, and not thinking first, is this Democratic, is it Republican, where does it fall in the political scales? And I've appreciated the ability to work with her on so many of these important issues that have come before us. And I think the Senate should take a minute to think about this in relation to this bill. The whole world is watching us. When I say that, I don't mean the whole world literally, but I think the country's watching us. Why do I say that? Because 1,000 groups have endorsed us moving ahead with this bill. Here it is. A coalition of 1,075 organizations from 50 states. Here's what they said about this transportation bill. There are few federal efforts that rival the potential of critical transportation infrastructure investments for sustaining and creating jobs and economic activity. This is what they wrote. So they know that this is the way to sustain and revive economic activity. This is what's at stake. Right now, 1.8 million jobs are created because we have a transportation bill. Madam President, that bill ends March 31st. So 1.8 million jobs are at stake if we don't act. And because of the way we wrote our bill and leverage funding, and this gained great bipartisan support, we have greatly increased the TIFIA program, which the Transportation Infrastructure Financing Program, which leverages funds by 30 times. So we believe we will see another 1 million jobs created. So we're talking 2.8 million jobs are at stake, and we have an amendment on women's health. And I just keep coming back to how insane that is. I also want to note again how many unemployed construction workers. Remember I told you that 15 stadiums could be filled with unemployed construction workers. This is the number, 1.48 million construction industry workers unemployed. The unemployment rate is 17.7% among construction industry, whereas the national unemployment rate is 8.3%. We know the housing sector is still having major problems getting out of the funk it's in. It's tough. So we have got to do this bill. And I have a picture, just in case your mind's eye wasn't able to conjure it up. Here is a picture of that stadium, filled with about 100,000 people. So 15 of these would basically reflect the unemployed workers. Now, who are these groups that are supporting us, and are they bipartisan? Oh, my goodness. I don't think I could share with you a more bipartisan list of organizations than the AAA, the American Association of State Highway and Transit Officials, the American Bus Association, the Concrete Pavement Association, the Council of Engineering Companies, the Highway Users Alliance, the American Moving and Storage Association, the American Public Transportation Association, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, the American Society of Civil Engineers. It goes on and on. The Trucking Association, Metropolitan Transportation Organizations, Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, Governor's Highway Safety Association, International Union of Operating Engineers, Motor and Equipment Manufacturers, National Asphalt Pavement, National Association of Development Organizations, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Stone, Sand and Gravel, National Construction Alliance. Oh, it goes on. That's just a partial list of those 1,000-plus organizations. When we started our bill, Madam President, you remember we made history because we had Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO, sitting next to Tom Donahue, sorry, correct me, Donahue, the head of the Chamber of Commerce. Donahue and Trumka, the odd couple. They're fighting and arguing on everything. They come together in front of our committee because they know we will all benefit. All of America benefits when we do a bill like this. So I think I've shared with you a lot, but there is one more thing. If we allow this bill to go away and we are stuck with an extension, because the Transportation Fund is not collecting enough gas tax revenues because there's a good news reason. We're getting better fuel economy and we're taking more public transit. So the gas tax is not coming in at the rate it normally does. We will be down 35% in the fund. So right away, 631,000 jobs are down. So what's so great about our bill is it's 4 committees, including the Finance Committee, who filled the hole, filled the gap in a way that was bipartisan. So our story is a great story to tell. If I had to tell my grandkids, I'd say once upon a time, there was a time in America when we didn't really have a national road system. But a Republican president named Dwight Eisenhower had a vision. He was a general. He knew it was important to move things in a reliable way. And he had a vision of a national transportation system, and everybody in the country said, what a great idea. And we started to have a bill every few years to authorize a highway fund. And then somebody came up with the notion of it being funded by the users, so that the gas tax would go, part of it, to this fund, and we would have enough in that fund to build our highways, our bridges, and then later on our transit systems. People said, you know, we have a lot of wear and tear on the roads. What if a lot of people took transit, got out of their cars? It would be better for the air quality. It would be better for everybody, for the state of the roads. And so now it was married up, highways and transit and bridges. And now we have to live up to that legacy and not bog this bill down with birth control amendments and women's health amendments and amendments about Egypt or anybody else. There's time for that. We don't mind those battles, but not on this bill. And infrastructure is the name of the game, and we all know it, Republicans and Democrats. So I say, let's stop playing games with this bill, please. Let's dispose of this birth control amendment, this women's health amendment. Doesn't belong on here, but if that's what it takes to get us off dead center, fine, let's go. It will be polarizing, as Olympia Snow, I'm coining her term. It will be polarizing. It will not be pretty. But we'll dispose of that. And then we'll move on to this bill. And I hope we won't have to face 5, 10, 20, 30 unrelated amendments. I hope we can get it down to a small number and move on. Pass this bill. Lift up the workers. lift up our businesses. Every dollar, almost, most of the dollars goes straight to the private sector here, through our states, through our local entities. And let's hold our head up high when we go home. So when I go to the supermarket, I don't have people coming up and saying, what is going on over there? Birth control on a highway bill? What, are you kidding? I don't want to have those conversations every time I go to the supermarket. What are these guys thinking, they say? I say, I don't know. I can't speak for them. I think it's an agenda that appeals to the far right of this nation. It's not a mainstream way to go. And in closing now, I will say, for those who say Republicans and Democrats never work together, that is not true. Senator Inhofe and I are as far away from each other politically as two human beings can get. But we teamed up. We put aside our ideologies. We put aside our pet peeves. We put aside, you know, perhaps things that we in our heart really wanted to do on this bill, but we put them aside, and we met in the middle. He was over here and I was over here, and we ended up right in the middle, and we said, we can do this. We proved that we can do it. And it was a challenge that was put to us by both our leaderships. And we met that test. And other committees met that test. So here we are. So now are we to say to committee chairs and ranking members, Republicans, Democrats alike, forget about it? You know, it's not worth it? Work your heart out. I pay tribute to my staff, my Democratic staff, to Senator Inhofe's Republican staff. They worked night after night after night to come together on this bill, and then we were given another assignment 2 weeks ago to try and resolve the germane amendments, and they have come together and they have resolved, I don't know how many, but dozens of amendments. So is the message here, work your little hearts out, you know, have your staff give up their nights with their family and come up with a bipartisan bill and all of a sudden have it subjected to some polarizing amendments that have nothing to do with the subject? Please, let's not see this bill go down. Because if this bill goes down, let me tell you, I, for one, will go to really as many cities as I can and counties in this country and tell the truth about what happened. There's no reason for us not to get this done. And when you have the Chamber of Commerce working with the AFL-CIO, you have, you know, Republican-leaning business organizations working with Democratic-leaning worker organizations all throughout this country, over 1,000 of them. And I talk to them every week to say thank you to them for keeping the pressure on all of us to keep moving forward. When you have that kind of bipartisanship in our committees, when you have that type of bipartisan bill on the floor, when you have that type of bipartisan support in the country, it's time to move forward and get the job done for the American people. I thank you very, very much, Madam President, and I think I have one matter of business here, and then I'll yield. Madam President, I have 5 unanimous consent requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and the minority leaders. I ask unanimous consent that these requests be agreed to and that these requests be printed in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you so much. And seeing no one else here, I would note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Well, the Senate has moved from offering general speeches to debate on the surface transportation bill. Behind the scenes, negotiations over unrelated amendments has delayed progress on the bill. The contraception amendment offered by Senator Roy Blunt has been the target of most of the debate the past few days. It would allow insurance providers to decline to offer coverage if they're morally opposed to it. Senators have agreed to vote on that amendment tomorrow morning. In the House, members are offering general speeches right now. Later today, work on a bill eliminating environmental protections for a number of fish species in California and changing water distribution in the San Joaquin Valley. Actually, the House is out right now. They will return, and that will be on their agenda for this afternoon. Earlier today in the House, California Republican Congressman David Dreyer came to the floor, and he announced that he was retiring from the House at the end of this term, which would be his 16th. He chairs the House Rules Committee, of course. Congressman Dreyer is the 6th California House member to announce his retirement when his term expires. You can watch his announcement, by the way, from the House floor. We do have a link to it available on our website. Go to cspan.org.